The road to Neverwinter had not been kind, and yet somehow, against all reason, it had led them exactly where it needed to. The river had carried them from wild country to civilization, from the haunted edges of old ruins and dragon-cursed villages to the stone towers of the North's greatest city. But even before they reached its gates, unease had already taken root among them. The obsidian shard remained a silent poison in their company, an object of fascination, fear, and growing consequence. Ezien Ehigo, newly joined to the party by chance, misfortune, and a boat that was almost but not quite the wrong one, had already seen enough to understand that these travelers were tangled in something far stranger than bandits, goblins, or the ordinary perils of the road. They had seen a river part around a wrecked rowboat. They had seen a water elemental rise screaming from the current. They had watched Tavin plunge through living water and tear it apart with sheer desperation and force. They had watched Aluin hold back the river itself, if only for a moment. And in the quiet that followed, as they made camp upon a familiar shore and shared what they knew of the shards, of Venomfang, of Ruxithid, and of the strange pull these black stones exerted on the mind, it became ever clearer that their path no longer belonged to chance. By the time the walls of Neverwinter rose before them, they were not merely travelers arriving at a city. They were people expected. Even that much became clear almost immediately. The city guards did not sound alarm when the party arrived by river, but neither did they treat them like simple wayfarers. Eyes followed them. Word moved faster than their footsteps. By the time they made their way through the city streets and into the orbit of power, there was already a sense that doors had been opened before they even knew to knock. And so it was that they found themselves granted audience with Lord Neverember. Brought into the ruler's court beneath vaulted stone and watchful banners, the party stood before a man who wore calm authority like armor. There were more guards present than there needed to be, enough to make even casual words feel measured. Neverember received them not as strangers and not even as useful adventurers, but as pieces already in motion on a board he had been studying for some time. At first, the meeting seemed almost cordial. He knew who they were, he knew they had entered the city, he knew, or seemed to know, enough of their dealings beyond Neverwinter to suggest that their comings and goings had not gone unobserved. That fact alone carried a quiet weight. These were not merely roads and taverns now, not anymore. They had stepped into a place where information moved in whispers, where power did not need to shout, and where even a favor could sound like a command. And then Neverember told them what had been happening. There had been incidents in the city, disturbances. A handful of guards, perhaps only a few, had suffered some terrible affliction. Gone rabid, violent, unstable. Not drunkenness, not illness. Something worse, something eerily reminiscent of what the party had already seen in Phandalin, in the pitiable and distorted condition of Filch. That similarity was no small thing. It was enough to send an immediate chill through the room, because by now they understood better than most that madness did not always come from within. Sometimes it was placed there. Neverember believed the cause lay with Bogentel's book. That cursed, blank-paged mystery, once retrieved from Agatha's haunted domain and delivered into the hands of Sister Garaele, had made its way to Neverwinter and from there into the scrutiny of learned minds. It should have been studied in safety, interpreted with caution, perhaps unlocked by royal scholars and careful hands. Instead, something had gone wrong. Badly wrong. The Wizards' College of Neverwinter had attempted to investigate the book. Powerful minds had gathered around it. Learned men and women had tried to pierce its silence and uncover its hidden meaning. But rather than yielding knowledge, the book appeared to have spread corruption. Whatever force slept within its empty pages had not remained dormant under examination. It had reached back. There had been an accident, Neverember said. A quarantine had been placed around the college. Something dangerous now lingered within its walls. And until that problem was dealt with, the party would not be permitted access to the Royal Library or to the map they sought, the one that might lead them onward to the forgotten dwarven secrets buried somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary men. It was an ultimatum hidden inside a request. Deal with the book, then earn what you came for. Before facing the college, the party sought answers where they could. Neverember told them that Sister Garaele had been detained and held in the castle dungeon for questioning. and so they descended into the lower dark to speak with her. There, behind stone and iron, they found not a conspirator, but a woman as confused and alarmed as anyone. Sister Garaele did not understand why she had been taken. In the dead of night, she said, men had come for her. Hard-eyed, disciplined, secretive men who felt less like common guards and more like instruments of a ruler's fear. She had been seized, interrogated, and pressed for explanations she did not possess. Why had she brought the book? What did it do? What had she unleashed? But she had no satisfying answers to offer. She had not known, or at least she seemed not to have known. The party questioned her carefully. They read her expression, her voice, the strain in her face. Nothing about her rang false. She appeared honestly shaken, honestly out of her depth, and genuinely disturbed by what the book had apparently become. If she had made a mistake, it was a mistake of ignorance, not malice. 2 other harpers were present as well, but they gave little away. Whether by caution, fear, or discipline, they remained mostly silent, leaving Garaele to carry the burden of explanation as best she could. And yet even there, in that dim chamber, something was wrong. One of the party, suspicious of the atmosphere and the unseen pressures folding around the room, reached out with magic to sense what mundane eyes could not. The result was immediate and unsettling. There was an aura of magic upon one of the nearby guards. Not upon Garaele, not upon the harpers, upon a guard. The revelation hung in the air like a drawn blade. Nobody spoke of it aloud. Not there, not with iron bars, shadows, and armed men so close at hand. But the knowledge settled uneasily among them all the same. Someone in Neverwinter was using magic in secret. Whether for surveillance, manipulation, protection, or something more sinister, they could not yet say. Only that the city's troubles ran deeper than one cursed book. With little more to gain in the dungeon, they turned toward the true heart of the matter, the Wizards' College itself. Before going, they made one practical stop, a local potion shop, whimsical and strange in exactly the way such places often are, where danger and absurdity mingle freely on cluttered shelves. There they prepared as best they could for what waited ahead. Fire-resistance potions were purchased, a small hedge against the growing certainty that flame would be part of the coming trial. Sariel, in a moment both opportunistic and utterly shameless, acquired a fine cloak and had the expense placed upon Zarathoin's account, an act that, under less dire circumstances, might have drawn laughter at a tavern for weeks afterward. Then, potions in hand and resolve hardening, they approached the college. Its condition told the story before a single word was spoken. The place had been sealed, boarded, closed off from the city like a wound that no one dared touch. Something terrible had happened here, and everyone nearby seemed to feel it. Through those halls, rumor had already passed from mouth to mouth. A gifted dwarf mage, once brilliant and respected, had descended into something monstrous. They learned his name from those still willing to speak. Zarathoin. He had been one of the most talented figures at the college, a dwarf of unusual power and evident promise. He had been among those investigating Bogentl's book most intensely, peering deeper into its mystery than the others dared. Then suddenly something changed. No one present could say exactly how it began. One teacher had been elsewhere with students when disaster struck. Those students, he said, had been attacked by Zarathoin and badly hurt. Afterward, they vanished from sight entirely. The college was evacuated in haste, and Zarathoin remained inside. The last reports were the stuff of nightmare. He had been seen drifting through the halls, floating where no feet should tread, moving with impossible speed past the windows. Fire had become his language. He burned, raved, and hunted through the abandoned chambers, while soldiers attempting to secure the building fell before him one by one. Whatever man he had once been, something now wore him like a mask. And still, the party went in. The moment they crossed the threshold, danger made itself known. Traps were found almost at once, evidence that the place had become more than a prison. It had become a lair. Worse still, the doors were sealed behind them by the guards outside, shutting them into the college with the thing they had come to face. It was a deliberate choice. There would be no easy retreat. The halls of the Whittier College swallowed them in dust, silence, and the lingering scent of scorched stone. Then came the voice, Zarathoin's words boomed through the corridors, warped by distance and madness, echoing from unseen chambers with the certainty of a predator who knows his prey is trapped. There was no negotiation in that voice, no plea for help, only hatred, menace, and the promise of flame. He would burn them, and then he tried. What followed was no simple skirmish, but chaos cast in firelight. Zarathoin struck as a creature transformed, flying through the open chambers, wheeling through the air with unnatural command, hurling destruction from above and using the architecture itself as part of his assault. Flames flashed through the halls, heat rolled through the college in waves. His movements were erratic, dangerous, impossible to pin down for long. Yet the party met him blow for blow. Sariel, ever defiant even in terror, held the line with faith and fury. Rowan, unwavering as hammered steel, brought divine wrath against a foe who had become something less than mortal and more than sane. Tavin fought through the storm with relentless motion, driving himself again and again into the heart of danger where others would have hesitated. And Ezien, new to their company but already proving his worth, turned daring into strategy, launching his grappling hook toward the airborne dwarf in a wild attempt to seize control of the fight. For a moment it worked. Then Zarathoin simply took him with him. Snatched into motion, Ezien was carried across the chamber in a mad, violent sweep as Zarathoin surged through the air, turning a clever maneuver into a desperate struggle for survival. Steel flashed, fire roared. The battle became a blur of movement and collapsing space, a contest not only of strength, but of nerve. And through much of this, Aluin was absent. While the others faced Zarathoin directly, she followed a different instinct, one no less important. Rather than commit herself wholly to the battle in the central chamber, she went searching for Bogentel's book itself. Somewhere within this corrupted place, the source of so much misery still lay hidden. If Zarathoin had been changed by it, if the college had fallen because of it, then defeating him without securing the book might solve nothing at all. So while fire and steel clashed elsewhere, Aluin moved through abandoned rooms and haunted silence, following intuition, fragments of evidence, and the pull of the deeper mystery. And in the end, she found it. Not upon a pedestal, not locked in a warded vault, but on the floor of a room within the stricken college, as though whatever had erupted here had cast it aside in violence or terror. The book was there, real and terrible in its stillness, the same inscrutable object whose blank pages had already cost so much. At nearly the same moment, Zarathoin fell. Whether by exhaustion, faith, steel, or sheer attrition, the party at last brought the maddened dwarf down. The firestorm ended. The flying horror that had haunted the halls was defeated. But victory brought no true sense of peace, because his death answered almost none of the questions that mattered. What had the book shown him? What had it done? What had become of the students he attacked? Why were guards elsewhere in the city succumbing to similar symptoms of corruption and violence? And perhaps most importantly of all, who exactly still believed this was merely an isolated incident? Because now the signs were impossible to ignore. Madness had spread beyond ruins and forgotten caverns. It had reached Neverwinter. It had touched the seats of power, the cells beneath the castle, the soldiers on the walls, the scholars in the colleges, and perhaps even the hidden agents moving in the shadows between them. A magical aura had been found on a guard in the dungeon. Lord Neverember had known of the party's arrival before they ever announced it. The Harpers were silent. The Emerald Enclave had heard enough to pay richly for information. And at the center of it all sat a book whose pages remained empty even as it left devastation in its wake. Zarathoin was dead. The college had been breached, and Aluin stood with Bogentel's book in hand. The party had won, if victory could be measured in survival, but the feeling left behind was not triumph. It was the sense of a curtain being drawn back. Because this was no longer just about a dragon in Thundertree, or goblins on the road, or a haunted banshee in ruined woods. Those had been the shape of the danger at the edge of things. This was the danger at the center, in the city, in the institutions men trusted, in the minds of the learned and the armed alike. Somewhere ahead lay the royal library and the map they still needed, the one that might point them toward long-buried dwarven truths and whatever answers those ruins contained. But the path to it now wound through a city that was watching them, using them and perhaps fearing them. The book had not yet revealed its secret. The shards still whispered. And in Neverwinter, beneath stone towers and ordered streets, something old and malignant had begun to stir. And the party, whether they wanted to be or not, had become the ones walking straight toward it.